Hello and welcome everyone. A very good morning. I, Sonali, on behalf of Economic Times, would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the panel discussion. It is time to get personal, boost customer engagement and marketing ROI through in-app visuals. Today's panel discussion will provide key insights from digital marketers and growth practitioners on elevating customer engagement, personalization, and conversion rates. On that note, I would like to first extend a special thanks to our esteemed panelists for taking their time out and joining in today, and a big thanks indeed to our attendees for tuning in live for the session today. As I can see, people are still joining in. Meanwhile, I would take a few minutes to introduce our expert panel who is live with us today. To begin with, I'll start with introducing Saumil Agarwal, Director Marketing India and GCC Make My Trip. Somil comes with over a decade of experience at leading global firms, being a keen learner and avid marketer, and as a part of founding team of 3G, 4G Internet at Airtel. Somil has closely been involved with the advent of the mobile internet revolution in India. We welcome you on board, Somil. Pleasure to have you here. Moving on to our next panel member, Shreya Malpani, Creative Director, CureFit. Shreya is passionate about creatives and design and has led Myntra's creative team in her past stint. Currently, she's leading the creative and design direction of CureFit. Welcome you on board, Shreya. Moving on to our next panel member, Pratmesh Tembla, Head of Growth Licious. Pratmesh is a digital marketing learner with hands-on experience of over 6 years in acquisition as well as retention in e-commerce, online entertainment, education, and banking domains. Pleasure to have you, Pratmesh. Moving on to our next panel member, Satej Tirur, CEO Rocatium. Satej is passionate about startup technology and the positive impact startups can create with technology. He has a decade of experience spanning multiple roles across multiple geographies at startups and trillion-dollar companies. Welcome on board, Satej. Moving on to our next panel member, Brijesh Kumar, who is from the marketing team on Lenskart, and he will be joining us shortly. Moving on to our final panel member and the session moderator for this session, Vishal Jacob, Chief Digital Officer, Wavemaker India. Vishal has spent nearly 2 decades in digital marketing. His experience spans across all aspects of digital marketing, be it media, creative, content, or tech. He has worked with some of the largest clients across India and parts of Southeast Asia. Pleasure to have you here, Vishal, and thank you for indeed moderating the session ahead. The discussion will be on for a duration of an hour. If you have any questions during the course of the panel, please feel free to post it in the Q&A box that you can see below on your screen. We will be taking a few questions towards the end of this discussion. Please keep your questions related to the subject being discussed and kindly mention the panelists to whom the question is being directed. And on that note, I would like to hand it over to Vishal to take the proceedings ahead. Over to you, Vishal.
Thanks, Sonali. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the introductions, and I'll take it from here. I'm really excited to be moderating this session today, and hopefully we'll be having some very, very meaningful and insightful conversations around how in-app visuals can actually boost consumer engagement and also drive marketing ROI. We've been doing a bit of research in the last 1 year to understand the marketing models and how they're actually quite different. When you look at traditional marketers and legacy brands, as well as, D2C and native digital brands, basically. And the models, what we realize is completely different. And one of the very interesting insights that came from this entire study is that, if you look at digital and native brands, the level at which they've been able to extract from a single consumer, the lifetime value of a single consumer is a lot more compared to traditional brands. And one of the reasons that this actually happens is because they've been able to kind of engage with consumers and have that user experience, which is very unique to every single consumer that they kind of engage with on the brands. And my hypothesis over here that in-app visuals actually play a very, very important role in this experience. So to start with, we'll go with one round of conversation with all the marketers over here. And Somil, if I can just start with you, when you look at Make My Trip, for instance, what's the level of emphasis that you'll actually place on in-app visuals? And talk to me as a marketing head, right? When you look at all the marketing initiatives that you currently look at, where does in-app visuals actually lie, and what's the level of emphasis that you actually put on that?
Thanks, Vishal. See, fundamentally, the way I and the team here at Make My Trip looks like in-app visuals, it's almost like the equivalent of how you would run a retail store, right? If you are in a physical retail model, you have your storefront, and which is where you put the most jazzy items or the more high attention grabbing items to get footfalls into the store and then make consumers try out your products. For an e-commerce platform like ours, the in-app visuals, what you see on the homepage is actually doing the same thing. Once you have got the consumer to open up your app, the quality of the visuals over there is what will decide whether you're able to retain the attention of the consumer and get him to play with the different features and offerings you are giving to the consumer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Clearly, from an overall marketing perspective, a very high degree of emphasis goes into how our homepage and our storefront looks like.
And if I can get you, Prathamesh, also onto this discussion, Licious has been probably one of the most important things for non-vegetarians like us in this given time, right? If you could just give us a sense in terms of at your end, and I think there was an interesting point, when we had initially discussed, you talked about how visuals actually need to differ when you look at geolocations across the country, right? Because an Isla in Kerala is a Bhangra in Bombay. So what's the level of emphasis that you put at your end? And if you could just walk us through that.
So I think the way Saumil mentioned, it's about a storefront-based approach. So just cut back 10 years before, you used to go to a Kirana store. For example, Vishal, if you go to a Kirana store, probably, or for example, as a child, when I used to go, the Kirana wala uncle will show me a dairy milk. Whereas to my mom, he will talk about dal or pulses. Now that's personalization, right? So when I talk about Saumil's point, it's actually about personalization. And in-app visuals is a means to the end out there. And it's one of the most strongest and the lowest hanging fruits. So first of all, and like Saumil also mentioned, you can then create that experience there. Second, if all of us marketeers here, everybody who is listening here, you will know how traffic is expensive. We are just paying money to Facebook, Googles of the world, getting that user on our platform. Eventually, when we see our conversion rates, it's all dependent on in-app visuals. So that's why it becomes extremely, extremely critical when you're looking about cost optimization. Now, at the third part, when you spoke about Licious. So when we sit here in Bangalore in our corporate offices or working from home, we think white pomfret hota hai. But when the user actually looks at it, like somebody, like for example, my mother-in-law, she thinks in terms of paplet. In Marathi, it is called as paplet. Whereas if you look at in Chennai, it is called vowel. In Kolkata, it is called, in Kolkata, it is called Baul Chandi. So users think in that way. So when people actually see those words or are able to visualize, in fact, they believe that this is what I'm actually looking for, and hence our conversion rates improve. So these small nuances, which probably Satej or Shreya get us out here, it actually helps us in improving our metrics. So.
And if I were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, essentially, if you look at the emphasis, 10 being the most, very, very important and 1 not. So how would you rate in-app visuals in that scale? So would you give it an 8, 9, 10 kind of a thing?
I'll give in-app visuals probably 11 out of 10. But we सबसे lowest hanging fruit hai. Yeah, product team, tech teams, if I want to get anything done, I have to make a BRD, I have to convince 5 folks, I have to convince the tech folks, and it will come after 2-3 months. Today, if I go to my creative team, tell them, give me 3 in-app pop-ups, I can get it by end of day, run an experiment, ABC experiment on CleverTap. But in the next 2 days, I have the results, which one works better, and then just do it. Just imagine the ease of it.
Sure.
That's why I'll say 11 out of 10. Why aren't you, if you're not doing it even now, why aren't you doing it? That will be the question.
Got it. So Shreya, I'll come to you next. Essentially, if I ask you the same question, I know you'll say exactly it's 7 out of 10. You're the creative director, and there's no reason why you would not agree that in-app visual plays a very good. But the question, Shreya, to you is, when you look at, the user experience as such, how is it that you actually use visuals to kind of enhance user experience? How is it that you look at the entire user journey across the app and then kind of use visuals to enhance the experience? If you can just walk us through some of the examples of how you've done this for PureFit and PhD. Yeah.
So first of all, I think in-app visuals have huge potential, especially for consumer-facing products. How do we do it here at CureFit, right? It's very critical to understand where CureFit is coming from in the first place. Our vision is very challenging, but it's very clear that we're here to make fitness super fun for people, right? But how do we do that? It's important for us to make the entire fitness lifestyle feel a lot more desirable to users, and that's where we actually use our in-app visuals. It's very important to understand 3 very critical points that can help you optimize the effect of your visual. One very important point that every visual has these 5 important elements: imagery, typography, copy. It has negative space, it has color, right? All of these elements, and you have to be very, very critical about all of these elements because users' time span is very low and your real estate is very small, right? So you have to optimize on each of these elements to ensure that you made the most compelling creative to get that user's attention in less than 0.5 seconds and get him to either act or convert. Second, very important point again, you can't look at each individual creative or visual in isolation, right? Because a great visual will deliver a very long-term recall for a brand, and you can actually recognize what brand you're looking at, whether it is Zomato, Swiggy, without looking at the brand logo. It's because they've been using these elements very consistently, but in innovative ways, time and time again. And third important point is, unlike FMCG, right, shelf life of our visuals, our creatives is very low. You have to constantly ensure that you're refreshing these creatives at a very fast pace so as to not lose users' attention. You'll see that there's a great visual and it will drive brilliant CTRs. Just keep it for 3 days, the CTRs will plummet significantly.
Got it. Yeah. I think very, very valid and interesting points that you raised, especially the one about, the limited time that you actually have to catch a user's attention, right? And to that, Satya, just want you to come in over here, right? At Rocketeam, and again, a lot of people would want to understand a little bit more about what Rocketeam does, but your entire business model and the premise of your business model actually is on these lines, right? You empower brands to actually use visuals far more effectively to drive better consumer engagement. So if you can just walk us through what you'll do and how you'll empower brands, I think that'd be very useful for all of us.
Yeah. So at a very high level, very simplistic way, if you had to think about it, today, when teams make these kinds of creatives, they would go to a design team who would end up using Adobe software, which has been around for a long time, right? And it's great for making that first set of visuals. But when, exactly like what Shreya said, that I want to vary all of those things every 3 days. What Prathamesh said, I have so many different product lines, city by city, I want to make something different. If you have to go to designers to keep asking them to make those changes, sure, you'll get the first 2 or 3 within a day, but then multiple categories are going to them, multiple experiments are happening. So that ends up creating that pressure. So what we talk about is combining human creativity with automation. So you're able to templatize your designs and then either pushing some sort of catalog or a very simple user interface, you can make creatives at scale. Now that's a very meat and potatoes way of describing what we do. What we think of ourselves is a partner in the growth journey of a company. And briefly, I'll just tell you how we think about that process. So just look at in-app creative. It's a space that is evolving really fast. We are also learning with our customers because there is no one way to describe this. Is it visual merchandising? Is it in-app visual? There's no name for it. Advertising has a very clear name. You do performance marketing, advertising, it's very clear. But what is interesting is that many things of advertising and performance map very nicely to in-app creatives. You have the same sort of campaigns that you run. There is a time duration for it. There are slots where you put it. There are different targeting elements that you would do. There are creatives that go there. So what we've been able to do, because our customers first started using Rocketeam for advertising creatives, a lot of those learnings we've been able to bring to bear in in-app creatives. And so saying that a combination of different use cases multiplied by the different platform specific changes you want to do, multiplied by all the targeting elements, finally multiplied by the different experiments, that product gives you growth. So when we work with customers, we tell them it's not just a creative. You can use our software to make the creative. Where we add value with our customer success team and playbooks within the software is to say that, what is this thing for? It's not just an offer. Offer is one kind of thing which drives conversion. Do you want to drive product discovery? Maybe a new product. Do you want to talk about onboarding for a first-time user? These are the different strategies. So that's how we like to work with our customers. But broadly speaking, software itself will do one part of it. Then it has to keep getting better, evolving. And then the team also adds to the growth of the customers.
But I think it's a good interplay between what tech can do and what talent can do, right? If they both come together, the outcome is a lot much more better. So Brijesh, thanks for joining in. Just wanted to get you also into the discussion. So Brijesh, one quick question to you. I've recently bought a lot of frames from Lenskart, and I think just wanted to understand, when you all look at visuals at your end over there, right? So what's the level of emphasis that you all give in terms of prioritizing the right kind of visuals, and also if you can give us a little bit of sense in terms of how you use consumer insights, because I'm sure that you'll have an algorithm at the back where a person selecting one type of frame, you would know what kind of additional frames to push and kind of get the person excited about what kind of frames the person is most likely to buy. So if you can give us a sense in terms of how you guys look at in-app visuals and what is the level of emphasis, and then also from an insights perspective, we can give a sense in terms of how you use some of the consumer insights to track the user and understand exactly what kind of visuals are looking at them. So any points on that?
Yeah, so I'll come to the AI and the personalization part first, the latter part of your question. So we
Sure.
are working on it. The point is that recommendation engines, evolve, right?
Right.
And in fact, there's a new study which is coming from Boston Consulting Group, which talks about atomic personalization, and this exactly talks about companies having a bank of images, and the bank of images in itself helps the personalization. For instance, if a person like round glasses, right? So one has to have, let's say, 1,000 images of round glasses, and automatically when it comes onto the app, those kind of images, from the bank, they keep on changing, and then they sort of show up. From an in-app, visual perspective, I think one of our latest launches, if you've seen, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but New Balance is a brand that we are exclusively marketing in India. So we did a study of the TG that we wanted to target on. What was the user flow typically, with that, and where all the banners would work. In fact, we've also figured out how to use in-app visuals on the checkout pages also. If you want to use your checkout pages itself,
Right.
that sort of drives more awareness towards the new launch or a new product as well, because a person has ordered, right? After the order, you can't miss what is your order, and you just sort of scroll the app, and you sort of discover what is there just beyond, just below your order. So that is one thing. Other thing, I would say, we very smartly promoted the blue lenses with our in-app visuals. Also, the kids category products, we're sort of discovering. There, a lot of recommendation engine as well as a lot of AI. We are trying to figure out what will be the TG who potentially might have kids and whom to show, the kids category pages as well.
Right.
So these are certain things. But to be very honest, recommendation engines are not easy to build, and it takes a lot of effort, technology effort to get that right, and especially in a product like frames and lenses. It actually is really tough. We are working on it. Yeah.
But then, Somil, coming to you on that, right? When you look at recommendation engines, now you all have been around for a very, very long time. I'm sure you all have mastered the act of getting the right recommendations to the right kind of audiences. So, what's your views on that? And how do you guys use the consumer interactions on your app to understand consumer insights? Can you walk us through some of those thoughts?
Sure. I think first of all, I agree with what Brijesh said, right? Building recommendation engines is not an easy task. And I'm sure everyone else on this call would also agree to that. In our category, especially travel as a category, fundamentally our point of interaction with the user are anyways limited, right? Unlike say a food app or even a clothing app where the user ends up going at least once a month, he will fire up the app, or if it's a food app, maybe fire up almost once a week or even more. Travel, you typically know the frequency is much lower. And hence for us, using whatever information we have about the user to try and identify what is his behavior, and then use that to power whatever recommendations we give to him. That's what we've been working on. In fact, a lot of our in-app creatives are also powered by those insights itself. That if we know that this kind of user has depicted a particular behavior in the past, hence what kind of visuals show up for the user on the storefront or on the homepage of the app, that's what we end up using. So definitely a lot of power in using consumer data, a lot of power in using consumer behavior, and it's an always evolving model, and we are always working to improve it even further.
Sure, interesting. Prathamesh, you had a smile on your face when you talked about the time that's actually taken to get recommendations. And any views on your side? How are you looking at capturing insights, and how do you kind of organize the learnings that you get over time, and then use that for your campaigns and so on and so forth? Yeah.
So I think recommendation engine AI, I think I love these terms. I keep on hearing these things, and I believe eventually everything is powered by Excel. You give a logic, or it evolves, obviously. And there is a long shelf life to it. So that's why I, like in the first itself, I said in-app visuals are your low-hanging fruits. Focus on that. So in terms of insights, when we talk a lot about insight, like I spoke about Parplet, for example, these insights, they actually come, we have a very scientific approach there. We look at the quantitative data first. So if you look at the quantitative data, a lot of this data, be it whether using CleverTap or a WebEngage, you'll get these data insights coming in. So
Right.
what is happening at a city level, at a user level, at your first party data level? Once you have that data, we build certain hypotheses, which we have a consumer insights team. We do a qualitative calling around 20, 30 customers and just verify those hypotheses. Once we are done with that, that's when it comes into action to the creative team. And this is our hypothesis. This is what we want to test. And I think it becomes very critical to document these insights. So what happens is everyone who comes, they come with certain new sort of ideas. I'll give you a small example. Like when I was at Milk Basket, this was a time in 2018, we said we are moving to a flat design. Somewhat our creative team said that there will be no call to action on our creatives, on our banners. We actually did an ABC test. We said left side CTA, no CTA versus the right side CTA. Like a growth team, we said 90% Indians are right-handed, the thumb will reach on the right side CTA, you'll get better CTR on the banners. We actually did an ABC test. So we were able to get those insights through the quantitative data as well. So I would say be very aware about what the drop off is happening, and further just verify it qualitatively, or if you can do something on the app itself.
Understood. Understood. Yeah, quite a few interesting points. And Shreya, if I can just bring you in over here. So when you look at designing the entire user experience and stuff, there'll be a lot of experimentation that actually goes on, right? So when you went that experimental hat, and just like as Prathamesh was saying, there will probably be a lot of A/B testing that you need to do to kind of capture some of these insights. So how do you do this at CureFit, and what are some of the thoughts around that?
So at CureFit, almost on daily basis, on some page or the other, on some creative or the other, we are constantly in process of A/B testing or ABC testing at some point of time. But one thing that we all of us have to remember before going into an A/B test is, as I said, understand what the key elements of the visual and just change one little aspect. As Pratmesh said, if you're testing CTA, everything else on the creative has to remain as is, and just test the CTA. And also, secondly, do it for a significant time period to be able to actually 100% remove the biases, remove the subjectivity or environmental biases, to ensure that, hey, we decided right hand side CTA is the best solution. Secondly, and there are some areas, for example, and that's actually a very interesting research that we did at Myntra, where in the last leg of my experience, we started questioning that what is that imagery that really relates with our users. And we have at Myntra like a huge TG from an extremely premium user to a tier 2, tier 3 user as well, right? You're both urban and another. And there was a very preconceived notion saying for an urban TG, this kind of imagery will work. For a tier 2, tier 3 TG, these are images that are much more relatable, right? So we did a both qualitative and quantitative research for a month. And this quantitative was done for a month across all different categories. And we were so surprised to understand that human behavior is very different from how we thought. All the TGs across both urban were finding a very only one kind of imagery truly relatable.
Sure.
I'm talking purely imagery right now, and that's the power of A/B testing and constantly A/B testing to really learn and evolve your product based on your TG, based on on your audience.
Right. Prathamesh, you wanted to add a little bit more. I could see that you wanted to say something more on the line.
Actually, while Shreya was talking about the experiment setup, I think that's so critical right now. A lot of times we have flawed experiment setups, and some other external biases keep on cropping in. Like for example, we run these sales. Like for example, I'm pretty sure most of the companies do not have an A/B testing setup within the environment, within their app environment.
Right.
So on a Monday, you're running a 30% off sale. On a Tuesday, you're running probably a 20% off sale. Your in-app, your metrics will vary because the key metric, the 30-20, is going to vary. So keeping out these biases will be very critical. And one more thing that I've seen here is we are a bunch of impatient folks. If I have a hypothesis and it comes true, you're like, okay, yes, I have won the world. Yeah, my hypothesis sahi ho gaya. So the replicability of it, please question yourself. आज मैंने कुछ किया, if is it replicable or not? मतलब आज मैंने बैंगलोर में किया, हैदराबाद में, चेन्नई में, whether that's, if your hypothesis, if your insight is truly true, it will be replicable. And the last point, I think Brijesh mentioned it very beautifully. We think a lot about in-app visuals, in terms of just image. As
Right.
you mentioned, there are like, at least if you go in your app today, there'll be at least 10 touch points, and these touch points can be influenced through GIFs, through videos, through your on-app onboarding screens. Like if you see Zomato, the way they don't put a onboarding screen. They actually put a GIF which is running around. So there are hundreds of opportunities within your app, like you said about the post-order screen. If you look at entire user flow, you should actually go deeper, probably have an idea hackathon in your company, and you will figure out your creative team will be choked for the next 1 year if you give them the work.
Right.
Yeah.
I think both of you raised some really, really valid points. When it comes to, first of all, I think the most important thing, as I can hear from you all, is to wear that experimental hat and always keep questioning your hypothesis and your beliefs and try and see what works and what doesn't work. So on that, Satej, if I can just bring you in also, when you look at Rocketim and the kind of services that you'll provide, how do you like clients and what are the kind of ways in which you can help clients do these kind of experiments and learn from them?
Yeah, so one is like I was talking about, this separation of creativity and this sort of production work, right? So one is just freeing up that bottleneck that exists, saying if you had to make 60 more versions of something, we help you eliminate that, right? So that is the starting point. The second one is, like I said, we are learning with our customers. So the more of these use cases, more of these success stories you are hearing, you are able to productize it. Now, some of those are in the work, some of them have already gone into the product, right? So you now become this sort of growth playbook, this sort of conversion improvement toolkit kind of a thing. And then the other thing that we like to do, because we are also early in this space and learning with our customers, we try to have a very close association through our customer success team as well. So we do these quarterly business reviews, for example, where we say that, hey, these are like 3 more things that you could be trying. For example, you don't do rich media push. That is something that you should do, which then leads to a certain slice of your inventory, which for example, could be where you have more inventory, something which has more margins, right? Those are some strategies that we try to suggest. So again, it's a combination of what the software can do, what you are doing, because in some ways we are thinking about our customer's customer, because the end user is somebody like us, impatient, spending time on mobile, has no attention span, and that really doesn't change. So how do we help our customers who could be in very different industries, but apply similar sort of lessons to then reach out to that customer? So that's how we think of the problem. So it is software, but it's more software plus plus.
Understood. Very interesting. So moving on to another part of the discussion where we look at personalization, right, and audience cohorts basically. So it's definitely been proven that if you reach out to the kind of consumers with the kind of language or the kind of communication that would resonate with the consumer, the chances are that there would be high response rates. But the tougher part over here is actually creating those kind of cohorts and ensuring that you reach out to them, the kind of language that they want to bring. So British, if I can just bring you in onto this conversation, right? So if you can give us a sense on Lenskart, for instance, how do you go about understanding what are the different types of audiences that come onto your app or to your site, and how is it that you actually create the right kind of communication to reach out to them? And how do you create these kind of cohorts and ensure that you sustain the conversations with them on an ongoing basis and track and see the difference?
I'll be very honest with you. Technology is the key here, and some of the questions that you asked, these are questions which we were asking our technology teams to help us, answer faster. But I can just share with you is that our approach to offers and our approach to how to bring in a new customer on board, or how to sort of getting a customer to upgrade to a new product or a higher value product. These are some of the buckets that we are focusing on. When it comes to uh, showing a different set of product to an existing customer, or showing a new set of product to a new customer.
Right.
So, these are certain things that we are focusing on right now. And to be honest, a lot of the questions that we are discussing right now are being answered by technology. Some companies have evolved their technologies much faster. I mean, if you were to look at Flipkart for that matter, I think in the past 6 months in itself, I see that their app notifications have become much more smarter in terms of they're able to chase you very quickly in terms of if you left something in the cart or you were browsing something and there's some sort of a recommendation, that comes in. I think beyond Lenskart, there's one example I like to quote. Allow me to do that. I'm sure if you guys have come across boat products, right?
Both, yeah, of course, yeah.
Now, Flipkart is an app is a very, very, so to say, cluttered in the sense that like it's like everything is sold on Flipkart, right? All of us agree.
Right.
But if you would figure out board visuals and board visual placements is something which you can't miss by and large. I think that is a case study in itself.
Okay, so you point out a very interesting example actually. I thought of that. Prathamesh, if I can also bring you in over here on this specific question, right? On when you're looking at creating audience cohorts. First of all, do you see value in doing this? If yes, then how do you guys go about doing it? How do you kind of engage with these cohorts?
Yeah. So I think building this audience cohorts, when we look at first party data that you have, at that level, there are multiple level of segmentation, so many data points. You can define Android, iOS, you can define for the city level, you can define, for example, if you're capturing age, you can define age level cohort as well. You can define basis how many orders the customer has done, order 1, order 2, order 3. So I think it's very important for a company to identify मेरे लिए क्या important है. So for us, it's very clear. City is one very important variable. We give a very high weightage. Second is at what stage of order he is. Like if he is a completely new visitor, order 0 versus order 1. Like we have identified, these are different cohorts. For example, I'll go back at Rummy Circle. At Rummy Circle, when we were there, we identified a very important variable. For example, the first top up, like the first time the wallet recharge a customer does, is a deposit, is basis the phone that he does. For example, an iOS user will do a 500 or 1,000 rupees deposit, the first deposit, whereas an Android user will do it between 200 to 300. So these variables will depend basis the data that you have. As I spoke about Paplet at different cities, so city level regionalization become, food is very regional in India. That's why at Licious it becomes that way. Now, once you define these cohorts, then it depends on the user behavior. Like if I were to put an equation, user behavior is equal to a function of city, number of orders, phone, device, so on and so forth. Now, for us at Licious, we have identified city and the order behavior. Now, when I go at order 0, we have defined this cohort. This order 0 cohort, my objective is to get the first order from him. That's conversion for us. So for us, the onboarding becomes extremely critical. And that's where we are personalization. Like I'll give you a small example. In the month of January, there was bird flu. A lot of users stopped eating chicken. So we quickly did a small experiment. We got 3 in-app pop-ups made where we said our chicken is 100% safe. Our chicken comes with 150 plus safety checks. Our chicken is sourced from reliable sources, like in our biosecure farms. We actually made 3 in-app pop-ups, and we actually tested it on order 0 cohort versus order 1 to 4 cohort, order 4 plus cohort, like new repeat in that. If you see, when I talk about our chicken is 100% safe, that actually resonated with users who have never placed an order with Licious. Just came from them. And for example, customers who had already been placing order with us, that for them, it was like our chicken comes with 150 plus safety checks. Like this, I quickly got in 2 days, I got these results. Now, if you look at my whole performance marketing visuals, everything, they were now talking about 100% safety. Whereas my CRM communication, my SMS, PN, in-app banners for repeat users, that spoke about 150 plus safety checks. Now, so this actually, if you look at, you'll think, yaar, dono mein farak kya hai? But when we saw the CTRs, they were remarkably different actually. So this is the data that we actually got. And this is how cohort actually plays a huge role in actually determining your final user journey.
There means a lot of analytics and a lot of understanding of first-party data, and they're using technology to the right ways of understanding which audiences resonate with what kind of content.
Yeah. मतलब मैं technology तो इसको बोलूँगा नहीं. I think मतलब इसको technology बोलेंगे तो हाँ पैनल पे अच्छा लग रहा है, but it's basic common sense है यार, मतलब और कुछ नहीं है. Traffic conversion और कुछ नहीं है ये.
I mean, another recent example that I can quote from Lenskart is that we launched a new range called Metlix. I mean, the headline for that was Metal Up. So there I would say, as I say that, we are evolving in terms of AI and personalization, Metlix is a slightly higher end range of our products and very classy. So as Prathamesh said, the iOS, user was targeted more there.
Okay.
We also looked into certain data points, what was the order history and stuff like that. And obviously the city history as well.
I'll come back to this example, but I want to understand basically how you then use these knowledges or these insights to kind of create performance campaigns, right? When you target people off platform, basically. I'll come back to that in just a bit. But just to bring you onto this conversation, we're having a very interesting conversation around creating audience spots and targeting with the right kind of communication. But there's this entire debate around languages, right? So, and it's especially when you look at Make My Trip, which has got a presence across the entire country as such, right? So you'll be targeting people across various parts of the country. So how do you see the impact of languages and is it really worth it, honestly?
Fundamentally, right now on the online travel perspective, if you were to look at it, now your entire India is right now divided. That entire internet ecosystem is divided, right? You have about 500 million people who have access to internet on a smartphone. Roughly about 200 million have ever gone ahead and done an online transaction. And out of that cohort, there is about 150 million who are English speakers. And from that, you have about 70, 80 million who have ever booked a travel online.
Right.
So from that perspective, if you look at it, travel online bookers are right now in that English speaking cohort so far. And hence for us, while we obviously understand the value of vernacular, we have never experimented a lot with vernacular. Having said that, as we move into the next wave of new users coming onto the platform, vernacular is going to become a key priority for the organization as well. And I have been a part of organizations, not at Make My Trip, but in my prior roles, where I have set up multilingual campaigns and multilingual products. So I also know it is an extremely difficult task in a country like India. We have multiple languages and each language has its own nuances. So building it on a tech platform requires a lot of patience, and it takes time for the results to show. Yeah. While a lot of organizations are looking to do that, I think it's going to be a slightly longer journey. And each organization will have a different business priority, and hence that's where they will enter into that story.
Yeah, makes sense. Prathamesh, I just want to bring you to this part because at your end, I'm sure languages play a very, very critical role, right? Because the way you'll be talking to someone in Calcutta will be completely different from the way you talk to someone in Kerala. So, so just for our understanding, have you seen a lift when you're trying to change the languages across the app?
So there are two parts actually, Vishal. So one is vernacularization. मतलब actually मेरा जो script है वो भी it comes in the vernacular language. Another is using the names. So for us, using the regional names has worked well for us. Whereas on the performance marketing side, and especially when you are going deeper in the southern cities, we have actually used Tamil creatives where everyone will say cracking Chennai using Tamil creatives is one thing that we are trying. We have not been able to be successful as of now for Licious. With other Licious we've seen we are a slightly premium brand. Now, when I look at another brand which is very heavy in the southern markets, when I was with at Rummy Circle, if you know online Rummy, southern markets contribute close to 70% of their revenue. So there we actually created vernacular creatives and their CTR was much higher. Now, if you look at the TG there, a Rummy Circle TG is somebody who comes with a middle income group, whereas at Licious it's a high income group. And we've typically seen a high income group, though just a name में आप change कर दो, Paplet का आपने वो कर दिया, it will work. But पूरा vernacularization did not help us in Rummy Circle. It did not help us in Licious, whereas it helped us in Rummy Circle. So it will very much depend. I think where Soman was also talking about probably flight tickets के लिए शायद vernacular creative नहीं चाहिए. Whereas probably for a bus ticket, he might require it because the kind of customer who will take a bus, he is consuming content in a vernacular way. So right. I think it will depend on the NTG completely and the product that we have.
Right. Shreya, I just want to get your thoughts in. You're again reaching out to a very premium audience, I suppose. So wanted to get your sense in terms of has it really worked? Is it really worth exploring? What are the challenges you've seen in this?
That I think with both Prathamesh and Somil here, if your TG is an English-speaking TG or understands that language really well, you can't do vernacular half-heartedly. If you have to do it, you have to do it across the app. That requires a lot of technology support as well as a mammoth team support, right? But at the same time, both my experiences at Myntra and Kyopit have had like very good green signals on how you can use being colloquial in your CRM, on your social media, in places where just you're trying to create intrigue and you're trying to relate with that local audience, right? So we don't try to be vernacular. We try to be colloquial instead.
That's a very interesting point, actually. And I like the fact that you actually mentioned that it's the entire journey that really matters. But a lot of times we've seen brands communication right in front from a creative standpoint, where the creative is actually in a language, but when they take it into the app, it's completely different and there's a disconnect actually. So, Satish, do you have these thoughts on this? When you work with multiple brands, essentially, do you see a lot of brands using vernacular languages and and personal logist. Any points on that?
And all of us have been on the receiving end of Googles and Facebooks, all of them throwing stats at us and saying billion users and all of that, right? So conceptually, we all get it. We all want to do it. We all want to unlock that next phase of growth. You try multilingual and it's going to be magic. But different people have tried it to different degree. It's something that we definitely recommend people try it once. That's why parts of the product help with either approval mechanisms so that you can get translators on board, or built-in automatic translation. So we try to help in this process, but there is that nuance to it which only people can do, right? It's about this colloquialism. You can't just translate it and put that content. But we have seen success stories. So in one of those cases, which kind of reinforces the points that others have made, in one of our customers' cases, it's a fintech company that works with small merchants. Now, because they are not in the income range, they fall in the more middle and that kind of segment. And there are millions of them. So they have a large amount of data points. They are now able to make creatives in 26 different states for 22 different languages. And what they are seeing is that across the board, they are seeing higher conversion, but state by state, it varies. So you need to have that sort of growth mindset where you're experimenting, you're trying, saying that, okay, we'll fail a little bit, but definitely helps to have a large audience on where you can do these experiments. But definitely something that we recommend to different teams, that they try it at least once, and you never know when that door is going to unlock.
Right. Absolutely. Cool. The one question that I had in my mind was, this entire play between online or on-platform users versus off-platform, right? So how do you use the insights that you get from consumers who are interacting with you and engaging with you, and use those insights to create lookalike of audiences who are off-platform for recruiting users on board, right? So if any of you all have done something on this lines, anyone who wants to take this question, Prathamesh, Somil, if you any views on this part, right? So how do you use insights of consumers who are engaging with you, and then use that to kind of drive more audiences to yourself and find lookalikes of these audiences outside your platform?
So probably I'll start because we've done that. So 2-3 instances, I'll say, both on platform to off platform, from off platform to on platform. So this is at Milk Basket that we started. Very simple thing. We saw users ordering a specific SKU of milk, for example, who are putting it on subscription. Like a very small change that we did in our Milk Basket, where we see a short free delivery by 8 a.m. every day, and we put the milk visual. We changed the milk visual to which was actually having a 40-50% share on our platform. We changed that. Our CTR actually moved from something around 0.8% to 1.1%. A simple change, nothing much.
Right.
We saw onion, potato, जो ज़्यादा बिकता है वो performance के creative पे दिखा दो, and it improved it. मतलब these are very basic things, but it actually moved from, like I spoke about the bird flu example in front of you, 100% safe plus 150 plus safety checks, moving from on platform to off platform. Now, further, one thing that another interesting thing that we've seen at Licious, I don't know whether you guys have seen our recent ad which talk about the spreads, 2 kids talking about the spreads, hearty, meaty, Licious spreads. We are seeing a very good uplift in terms of customers who are coming and buying these spreads. So we actually got this cohort of customers, which is much younger than our existing TG. For the last 5 years, we've been getting a certain age group of customers. Spreads is a younger TG than that. We actually took those first-party data and we pushed it to our platforms to create lookalike audiences, and then opened up newer audiences for us out there. So if you look at this, actually came from on-platform to off-platform. Second thing, which also has happened from off-platform, if you would have seen the spreads ad again, on YouTube, we're spending very heavily on the spreads ad. We saw customers are coming and buying our spreads. Typically, our customers come and buy chicken and fish, which are the staple, if I were to say, the onion, potato of meat. But we saw these spreads coming in, and hence our on-app visuals, if you look, they've now moved from a typical chicken fish and conveying spreads as well. So that was an off-platform to on-platform learning that we got. So it's actually both ways, because we saw our spends actually increasing on that video, and hence we actually changed it here.
Right. Interesting. Somil, any views from you?
Yeah. So see, travel is anyways a very complicated category versus a lot of other categories out there, right? Every individual fundamentally is not just one consumer. Today, you could be coming onto our platform to say book a personal vacation. Tomorrow, the same consumer could come to the platform to book a personal a business trip, right? So the need set of the consumer, the requirements of the consumer, of the same consumer, change depending on the type of trip he wants to take. And hence for us, leveraging a lot of the insight of what is the behavior of the consumer and then using it for off-platform kind of campaigns becomes quite powerful. So just an example, about late last year, and when the situation was better, we had less number of cases, people looking to go out, we went ahead and started a campaign called Nearby Getaways, wherein we understood that consumers were not looking to travel a lot, but they would want to at least get out of their homes. When we use a lot of our internal assets to communicate to consumers, but we also wanted to use the typical digital channels, Facebook, Googles of the world. Now, historically, what would happen? That you would go to these channels, they would have their own segmentation, or they would say that this is a travel affinity kind of an audience, and you would go after them. And that's what historically we have been using. For this particular campaign, and obviously there's always a pressure on improving efficiency of campaigns. So we said, okay, let's look at people who have booked similar products with us already in the last, say, 3-4 months. And this was a time when obviously people are already starting to go out. So we knew that if in the last 3-4 months people have traveled and they have traveled for a leisure, that is the kind of cohort I want to go after, because that is the first one who can probably engage better with the campaign. We took that first party data, fed it into all the custom audience solutions which all of these players offer, and we saw significantly higher upside in terms of our conversions and all the down the funnel metrics as well. So extremely important to identify what is your proposition, what is hence the kind of cohort you want to chase, and then how do you use that information, the first party information, to improve your campaigns on other platforms. I think that's what we continuously strive for.
Sure, great. Shreya, any points from you?
Well, I just wanted to add one point to this entire process and I've seen a lot of places where we have both gone right or gone wrong. A lot of companies have very efficient instrumentation of getting the first party data and then bringing out signals or insights out of it, right? But data can be interpreted in like 1,000 different ways. And it is extremely biased in the way we interpret. So it's a great practice to just increase the efficiency of your campaign, is when you have a very clear insight that I think this sounds super cool. You validate your hypothesis, always at least talk to 10 people to understand what I am thinking. Does that really gel with the kind of consumer I want to target? Always do that and then apply it to campaign. And sometimes you'll realize that talking to the consumer, you'll realize that it doesn't work. And he will give you a completely different direction that you can then cross-validate with your data and then create campaign.
Right.
So this human element is very critical in interpreting data and just increase the efficiency.
Yeah, and I like the biases, actually, that we should be very conscious about not getting biases coming into play. And with that, I just want to finally get a sense from all of you all, right? All this is great, and it's very important and it's very critical to kind of analyze the visuals that and the kind of consumer engagement that you're getting on board. But what impact does it actually make into business ROI, right? So when you look at it from an ROI perspective, right? Does a good emphasis and focus on in-app visuals actually improve ROI? That's a key question. And that's the holy grail, actually. So if I can just get a sense from all of you, to what level do you think does it impact ROI? And if it does, how do you guys go about measuring it and optimizing that?
I'll just share my screen, just to show. I think we made this point initially about traffic being really expensive. So all of us performance marketers on the call, you have Google, Facebook को पैसा देके हम user को Play Store तक लेके आ जाते हैं. After that, your App Store screenshots play a role. Your on-app conversion onboarding plays a role. But beyond that, you can't spend money. Your CPM and CPIs you spend that money. I just share my screen here. I've done small calculation here to show you how it actually impacts. So if you guys can see my screen here, what we are talking about, for example, for the same amount of installs, if I'm seeing my conversion rate increase from 20% to 22%, like we talk about in-app visuals being completely personalized.
Right.
Conversions increase from 2000 to 2200, even though my CPI is the same. If you see my cost per acquisition or CAC, there's a 9% increase. You have not you've not done any more optimization on Google UAC campaigns or Facebook or anywhere. Here you get a direct benefit of 10%. And all of us growth marketers on this call will agree 10% is like, yaar, mera OKR ho gaya, is saal ka. Yeah. So this is the power of it. I'm just showing you in terms of numbers, this is how it impacts. And basis my experience over the last 7-8 years, I have seen this happening. I failed 10 times, but one time when it has happened, I'm like, set ho gaya, life set ho gaya. So this is one in-app visual. it's entirely under your control, guys. Like, I'll give you a very small example, one more small example. When we're talking about in-app visuals, closest to in-app visuals is your app store optimization. That's your universe. Like, looking at the data, if you look at the Licious logo now, right now on the Play Store, it has the name Licious on it. We got this insight when we saw people landing on the Play Store, searching Licious or Licious का different अलग-अलग spelling. So we said, पहले हमारा सिर्फ smiley था. I think my T-shirt here, it will have 2 dots and a smiley. Now it has like complete Licious. We saw improvement in our conversion rate. Google Play Store पे आप store listing experiments कर सकते हो. You can actually see incremental installs. So this will give you, for the same amount of effort, it will give you higher conversions and a better return. And rather than filling pockets of Facebook, Google, यार ये सब करके अगर conversion अच्छा आ रहा है, it's better for you. And second part, I think one part that we all, I think good Shreya just pointed it out about the human element. We're talking about personalization. Brijesh talk about atomic personalization, which implies for just one campaign, I'll have 200, 300 different sets of creatives. मतलब इतना ज़्यादा मैं personalize करना चाहता हूँ. But it's practically not possible for one designer to sit and do. भले ही हम उसको बोलेंगे आप एक दिन में you churn out 30 creatives, like he'll get exhausted. And I think that's where I believe Rocketium has a huge role to play here. मतलब even if we get an army of designers, नहीं होने वाला. It's not a sustainable practice. So I think technology has a big role to play, not just in creation as well as execution there.
Right. Very interesting points over there. Somil, Brijesh, you want to just quickly share your views on this? Does it really impact ROI, and what has been your point?
See, I completely agree with Prathamesh and the other fellow panelists that obviously personalization and experimentation helps. And I mean, at the end of the day, performance marketing or digital marketing today is all about experimentation. And
Right.
that is where experimentation / personalization is the way to go. And atomic personalization, as Prathamesh mentioned, I think now we have influencer marketing platforms like Grin or Creator IQ, etc. So these consulting firms, when they're talking of such things, obviously they are also talking of technology solutions helping you to do that. Because when they are building up such thesis or hypothesis that and this is what is possible or this is what one should do in marketing consulting, then obviously they will also push for a marketing automation tool as well, which will help do the atomic personalization. And I personally believe atomic personalization is the way to go when it comes to increasing your sales and reducing your dependence on the usual suspects, as Prathamesh mentioned, Mark Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin, which is Google and Facebook.
I mean, that's a new one which I've picked up today. That's the atomic personalization. I need to study a little bit more about that. Thanks for that, Brijesh.
Yeah.
So, to you before I do to close this discussion, just quickly, is it impacting ROI, and if yes, what number?
Obviously, yes. I mean, see, you do experiments and some of them work, some of them don't work. And the best part within within app visuals or whether it is email marketing, it doesn't cost too much money.
Yeah.
It's just incentivizing your creative team to think smarter.
Somil?
See, the way I think about it, Vishal, is that just in-app creatives will definitely improving them will give you efficiency improvement, right? You may get a certain CTR today, and we have seen this in multiple experiments at our end. CTRs improve. I think the real ROI impact comes when you're able to tie up the user story end to end. So right from the point to say that if the user has received a communication from you, it could be an in-app notification, it could be an email, it could be even a digital ad with the user sees on either of Facebook, Google. When that communication is the same as what user sees when he comes to your app, that is where you will get the best benefit out of ROI improvement. Otherwise, those are all different pieces of the story, different teams are managing it, and end of the day, ROI impact will not come till the time all these pieces are stitched together. And wherever we have been able to do that, I will not say we have done it 100%, but wherever we have been able to stitch the story end to end, we have seen significant uplift in ROIs as well.
Got it. Great. Yeah. So it's an entire ecosystem that needs to come together to drive the ROI. Got it. Shreya, what's your take on this?
One last point to all of these things that everybody said. Personalization हो या कुछ भी हो, ultimately bottom line है कि अगर आप अपने creative से if you can capture the right intent at the right time, user will move on to the second step of the funnel. So creators are ultimately, and personalization, all these automation tools can actually empower you in capturing the intent of that one specific user right in your creators. And that's what is going to be your next level of ROI growth.
Got it. Got it. And finally, Satej, the last word to you, basically. So, what would your word be?
So one thing that I want to say is that marketing is about finding arbitrage. You have limited attention of users that everybody is trying to. All of the panelists are very, very smart. They want people to spend time on their app, not somebody else's app. Even if you don't realize, CureFit and Make My Trip, Lenskart, Licious are fighting each other because there is only so much time I have. So marketing is about finding arbitrage and exploiting it until everybody else is doing it. Then you have to do the next thing. Now, when it comes to in-app creatives, that's not an exploit, that's not a hack. So even if you hear that it's low-hanging fruit, it's something you should do now, it's not something that's a temporary arbitrage that somebody has found, make the most of it, then move on to the next thing. It's a channel. It's completely in your control. It's your users, your app experience, your web experience. Make the most of it. If it doesn't work, think about what you would do with paid ads, SEO, any of these channels by our friends from the other side of the world, right? If it doesn't work, you don't say email sucks, SEO sucks, something else sucks, right? You say we suck. Let's do better at it. We have to crack this challenge. So I would think of in-app the same way. If it doesn't work, maybe we need to look at who our customers are. Maybe we need to do more experiments. Maybe we need to talk to more customers, like how everybody has been talking about. It's a channel. It's completely in our control. We need to figure out the best way to make it work. It's not a hack, although for now it might be a hack because not many people are doing it, or maybe they're not doing it well enough. So that would be my closing thoughts.
Great. Thanks a lot for that, Satej. And with this, I think we've come to an end to my questions, but there are a lot of questions that have been raised by the audiences. And given the paucity of time, we'll take a couple of them. So one interesting question that's been raised by one called Vinay is how frequently should one reinvent online user experience? So how frequently should one look at reinventing the online user experience? So, so would you want to take that, Shreya, because you've looked at it from a creative lens? How frequently do you look at reinventing things?
There are two very critical part of creating, constantly getting like great traction from people is balance between familiarity and freshness, right? If you created your habit from your homepage or from your different landing pages in a certain way, right? You expect to see a certain thing in a certain place. Do not change it very often. That is habit that builds over time. But what you put inside that, you have to frequently refresh it almost. And ideally, the content that goes inside that structure should refresh almost on daily basis if your product is a daily use product.
Got it. Got it.
Even a 2-day would be actually like a stale creator. So yeah, just balance between familiarity and freshness is very critical for a great result.
Right. Satya, just an interesting question to you. I'm not sure if you would like to address this, but here's a question, right? So how do you see the balance between human creativity and AI-powered automation? And tell us how this augmentation helps today's the brands in India, basically. So it's the balance between AI and human creativity. And you touched upon this a little bit earlier.
So briefly, I'll cover this. This is a broad topic, but what I'll say is that first and foremost, what we need to address here is that every brand is different. You can't start off with here are a bunch of templates and all you can do is put your logo, put your product image, change some copy. Every brand has a different way of telling their story and connecting with the customer. So you have to be able to address that. How do you do that is, so I'll give you concrete examples, right? Many of our customers use Photoshop to make designs. So what we help them do is instead of saying, come here, learn some new software or use elements of it to make something new, we say, take your Photoshop files, import it here, make your design. So all you are able to do after that is replace those elements in that design. So now when you want to do creative refresh, you go back to an old design, maybe you've made 20 versions of it. All of that software can help you do instead of again making another Photoshop file, making a change. So somewhere it's about taking existing creativity, existing designs people have, existing workflows they have, and building on top of that. So somewhere we don't think that even, I mean, translation is such a simple example, right? Google Translate has been around forever. We've integrated with Cloud Translate and stuff, but almost nobody will take that as is and make it live. So it can get you to maybe a 50%, maybe a 30%, but you need people to now come in and make those changes. So somewhere it's about helping people remove those bottlenecks of those repetitive steps. So keep identifying what those steps are where you don't need people. These are people who are already overworked, already doing so many different things. Why not help them on individual elements? So that's where we would see automation and AI coming.
Got it, got it. Prathamesh, there's one question to you. Again, this is something which you've already touched upon, but just to kind of reiterate this point again, right? So there are certain businesses that are trying hyper-local business strategies, right? Targeting people within specific geolocations and stuff. And the question is actually, so how can some of these visuals on apps be used as a crowd puller, to get people on board? And in this case, help in customer retention, right? So is there any views on how you use in-app visuals for hyper-local strategies
I think, so first of all, don't look at it as a crowd puller. Your in-app visuals keep a very clear metric. They are not a traffic driving metric for you, first of all. In the long term, yes, it will drive retention, but they are not traffic driving metrics for you. So keep it as a very focused conversion metric. है मेरा in-app conversion बढ़ेगा इससे. Second, when you go hyper local, just see whether that's required or not. So आज Licious का one idea which while brainstorming it came कि मैं when I'm in Vijayawada मेरा पूरा तेलुगु में लिखा रहना चाहिए. Is it required? Right now, no. When we spoke to consumers, but at Rummy Circle also we debated. We saw the cost-benefit analysis did not make sense. So I think it depends. For example, Amazon gives you an option to have the whole app in Hindi. Facebook gives you the app to be in Hindi. It makes it at their scale. But for a brand that you are right now, I don't know whether that's required or not. Just do a proper cost-benefit analysis there. Obviously, if you see your conversion rate improving drastically, then you might as well go for it. But yeah, it will actually help you in long term, like we had the white pomfret parplet example when we spoke about hyperlocal personalization.
And one last question, actually, this is quite an interesting one. This is on push notifications, and everybody will have a point of view on this, actually, right? So when we look at push notifications, so if you can just take this one basically, and then maybe somebody else can also join in. The question over here is nowadays there are so many push notifications being given out by the apps, right? And the intent over here is to bring consumers on board and increase your CTRs and stuff. So at what stage should one limit it to, right? So till what stage should one stop messaging? And where do you draw the balance between the two? Is the question.
I think great question, Vishal. And I'm sure if there's a very scientific answer to this, all of us would have cracked it by now. What I would say, right, and I think that's very important, each category has its own consumer behavior, right? So for example, for travel as a category, we know that a consumer who comes to book a flight ticket with us, he visits the platform at least 4 times. On his 4th visit is when he ends up booking the flight. So fundamentally, the objective of these push notifications is that can we make sure that the user has come once? How do we keep engaging with the user to bring him back to complete his journey? We know that if he's not come back after the first visit, he's probably hunting and he's probably go to some other player. Having said that, we always have a ABC experiment going on, wherein for each set of consumer cohort, we're trying to do different level of notifications and measuring the impact on what is it's impacting on the conversion. At the same time, from a consumer experience perspective, we see what is the impact it is having on our uninstall rates. There is a point in time, and we have seen this empirically as well, that after a certain number of notifications in a day, your uninstall rates start to significantly change. And I think for each category, it will be different. Maybe for travel, it is that after 4 or 5 notifications, it changes. Maybe for a food category, it is after 2 notifications, it changes. So each player will have to figure out what is that level for them. And again, that experimentation bit comes into it. How do you use that experimentation and how do you build your own insights around this?
Right. Cool. I think very valid points. And with this, I think we're out of time. So I'll have to conclude over here. I think I've had a fantastic time discussing with each and every one of you. There's a lot of insights that have come in on board. I'm sure you guys would also agree that you'll have learned from one another. Atomic personalization is one key buzzword that I'm going to walk away with. And I think a lot of us will walk away with that. But nonetheless, I think we can safely conclude that personalization is key to driving business ROI. We've seen an Excel sheet and probably a possible number that's actually been put to that thanks to Prathamesh over here. And I think another key point that we'd like to walk away with over here is the need for experimenting and keep going in with hypotheses and coming up with insights and constantly be at it to kind of drive that business growth. So with this, I'd like to conclude and hand it over to Sonali again. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
Thanks, Vishal. Indeed, an insightful panel discussion. I can see the Q&A box is flooded, and I'm sure with the shortage of time, we cannot take all the questions at the moment. However, we'll push it offline and share it with all the panel members. And if you could just take out a time from your schedule and sort of put it in, I think it would really help the attendees who are listening to us live and would like to know the answers to that. And I think with the insightful panel discussion, I'm sure there was a lot for attendees also to take back. And of course, the Q&A box certainly suggests the same. And thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Vishal, we really need to thank you. I mean, indeed, a great flow, great moderation. Thank you for stepping in and doing that for us. Appreciate it. And on that note, I think we can bring an end to the panel discussion. And indeed, thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the panel members for joining in today and making it more insightful.